The Crown Prince dies unexpectedly. The Crown Prince's 4 childhood friends find the murderer, wanting to avenge him. Little do they know, the girl before them is actually the Crown Prince who grew up with them and shared precious memories. So why on earth must I die at the hands of my childhood friends? A toast to the Mad Dragon subjugation team. At this moment, late at night in a tavern, people are joyfully celebrating the great achievement of the Mad Dragon subjugation team. The 4 heroes have successfully returned after subjugating the demon beast. In contrast to the crowd's revelry, one of the heroes is drinking alone. A blonde man walks into the room. Even if you're in a bad mood, you're still a hero. You can't be like this. It turns out this hero is in a very bad mood, with a hatred so deep that even alcohol cannot make him forget. He then asks the blonde man about the investigation. The blonde man says he hasn't fully absorbed the Mad Dragon's power yet and needs a little more time. The man stands up to get dressed, revealing a pattern on his back. He says he understands. After all, there are no clues. We've been searching for years for the murderer who killed that guy. The blonde man looks at the ground and secretly vows to get revenge. A similar scene is happening with another man. He is lamenting, "What's the use of saving the world? I couldn't save that person. I miss you so much, Leo. I will find the human who killed you. I will definitely kill that person with my own hands." Anyway, everyone has worked hard. I wish we could all be together like before. This story wasn't supposed to be like this. But now it has become a story of me desperately struggling to escape the fate of death and how I came to resent my childhood friends. Are you the one who killed my friend? After killing the Crown Prince to become the sole imperial princess, you wanted to live a life of luxury. You killed Leo. We will never forgive you. The girl, Lilia Alaria, wants to explain, but she cannot speak the truth. The Leo they knew, the Leo with whom they shared precious memories, is no longer in this world. Even so, why must I die at the hands of my childhood friends? Someone fell into the pond. It's Leo. The blonde man volunteered to go and save him. Soon, he pulled the fallen crown prince out of the water. He swallowed too much water. Quick, do something. A light glowed from the hands of a priest standing nearby. A magic circle appeared and was pressed on Leo's chest. The priest used holy power but found that His Highness's body temperature was still very low and prepared to move His Highness to the infirmary. Hearing this, Leo suddenly sat up, explaining that he was fine and just needed to be left alone for a while. The scene changes. Leo is hiding alone in the bathtub, soaking his body, while muttering, "It's okay, it's okay. Nothing will happen." Before long, he dragged his exhausted body into bed. She remembered her past life, always lying in a hospital bed, only able to read romance novels or play games. In a game, she could do anything. She worked hard to collect materials. Whether it was money or life, she could control them at will. It was the complete opposite of reality, where she could only wait for her life to end. The girl desperately hoped that if she could be reincarnated, she could live in that game. But things didn't go as planned. Although the girl was indeed reincarnated, why did she enter the world of this novel? This was a romance novel the girl had read in her past life. The identity the girl transmigrated into was Lilia Alaria of the Alaria Empire. The current emperor is Ladius Alaria. His sister, Princess Iris, had passed away, but before her death, she fell in love with a commoner night guard and gave birth to a daughter. That daughter was Lilia Alaria. Her father was a commoner, and her mother, Iris, passed away shortly after giving birth to Lilia. The struggle for the throne caused chaos within the empire. As a result, Lilia became a forgotten royal, living in a small tower at the edge of the imperial city. She wore ill-fitting clothes, had a small and underdeveloped figure, and ate meager food. Although it was tough, she lived a peaceful life until Emperor Ladius appeared. He was overjoyed to learn that his sister had given birth to a girl, because besides these maids, no one knew of the girl's existence. Moreover, the girl had the mark of the blood pact, proving her Alaria royal bloodline. More importantly, she was around the same age as his child, Leo. Afterwards, the emperor ordered the maids who knew the truth to be killed. Right in front of the girl, in the distant past, a dragon awakened on the continent. The ones who defeated the dragon and saved the world were the Holy Emperor of Dracania and 5 knights. After becoming heroes, the 5 knights each established an empire, and the Holy Emperor distributed the dragon's magical power among them. He acknowledged the authority of each royal family, but demanded that if the day the dragon reawakened came, the knights must answer the call of the Dracanian church, and they made a blood pact. Thus, the years passed. A few years ago, a mad dragon's egg appeared at the end of the continent. The dragon egg could not be destroyed by any means. Dark magic swirled around the egg. Due to the egg's influence, brutal demon beasts reawakened, and the world fell into unrest. The Dracanian Church summoned the descendants of the heroes, that is, the emperors of the 5 empires. For the day the demon dragon would be born, the church demanded that the descendants of the empires be gathered together. The temple would be responsible for their education. And so, the descendants of the heroes, 5 children bearing the mark of the blood pact, were summoned by the temple. Because of this, the son of the Alarian emperor was summoned. But how could he let his only son go to such a dangerous place? Therefore, he cut off Lilia's long hair. And from that moment on, Lilia became the crown prince of the Alaria Empire, Leon. In the Alaria temple, Lilia looked indignant. That dog of an emperor, what has he done to this poor girl? He actually used just a pile of good food to trick the girl into entering the temple in place of the crown prince. But there was nothing she could do. The girl at that time was starving. At the same time, the girl couldn't ask for help because the emperor had placed a silent spell on her. If she ever said she was Lilia, she would cough up blood and die. This situation was almost no different from her previous life, waiting to die under the shadow of death. But she didn't want that. Lilia was only 7 years old. She still had a chance. So she had to persevere. First, for these 3 years, she couldn't let anyone discover she was an imposter. In the temple, besides the children from the 4 families with the pact mark, there were also children of nobles from various countries living together. The noble children strongly disliked life here. They had to wash their own hair and dress themselves, wear the same uniform every day, and the food was terrible. But Lilia felt this place was a paradise. The clothes were comfortable, everyone was equal, and besides the daily prayer and activity times, it was very free. Most importantly, she could get delicious food anytime she went to the dining hall. The novel barely described life in the temple. It was only mentioned a few times in the later plot. The 3 years without the male and female leads. It didn't write about what kind of life Lilia lived after entering the temple in place of Crown Prince Leo. It only wrote that Lilia died by drowning in a pond in the imperial city. The 3 years in between should be safe. She headed towards the dining hall. Later, while eating, Lilia thought, how could a person be so clumsy as to fall into a pond and drown? Are they really that brainless? Just then, a voice was heard. It was the little blonde boy who had saved Lilia yesterday. Lilia instantly remembered. This child was the prince of the Roseberry Empire, one of the main characters of the Mad Dragon subjugation party. He was also one of the female lead's backup love interests who fell for her at first sight, Romeo Roseberry. In Lilia's memory, he was a very gentle and refined person. However, at this moment, Romeo kept reminding her that he was the one who saved Crown Prince Leo. This behavior was clearly a prelude to asking for a favor. It turned out he wanted Lilia to help him skip class. He wanted Lilia to lie to the priest that Romeo had fallen asleep in his room, and that he didn't have the heart to wake Romeo up, which is why he didn't come to class. Lilia had no choice but to agree. How is this gentle and refined? Seeing Lilia being so cooperative, Romeo felt that they got along well. But it wasn't long before child Romeo didn't get along with appeared. Felix Niachi, the young prince of the Niachi Empire, the man who would later become the emperor of Niachi, the strongest holy knight in history. Although his personality was cold, he was handsome. Unexpectedly, at this time, his relationship with Romeo was not good. At this moment, a silver-haired, red-eyed boy sat on the other side. He was Oscar Kressberg. Although he looked weak now, he was the guy who would later become the psychopathic emperor. There was also Karis Ascart, the nephew of the Ascart Empire's emperor, and the one who sacrificed the most after the Mad Dragon subjugation ended. And all these people were objects of Romeo's dislike. Lilia couldn't help but wonder, did this kid figure out that these guys were all his love rivals? But in the end, the female lead got together with her childhood friend, and all these guys were dumped. Romeo suddenly turned his head and asked Lilia if she hated them too. Because Lilia was his friend, she had to hate whoever he hated. But Lilia ignored him. She didn't want to get involved with the main characters. If she got noticed, she'd be dead for sure. It was better to just be a minor side character. For this purpose, she absolutely could not get mixed up with them. Although Lilia had made up her mind, it wasn't long before she saw him. She saw Oscar hiding in a corner, terrified and alone. No one would have thought that Oscar would be so fragile in his youth. It turned out that when Oscar was young, he had witnessed his father kill his mother right before his eyes. His father also said that his pupils were cursed eyes. Just as Oscar was lost in that painful memory, a slap woke him up. It was Lilia. She had woken Oscar up. Then she called a priest to take Oscar back to his room, but she felt she had caused trouble. She clearly didn't want any contact with him, but in the end, she just couldn't pretend she hadn't seen anything. He's a heretic, isn't he? Romeo suddenly asked, standing beside Lilia. Lilia was curious. Romeo, since you were here, why didn't you help just now? Romeo said it was completely different from Lilia falling into the water. He thought Oscar was possessed by a demon. This was indeed the common perception in this world. Unknown things were said to be demonic possession. Once or twice was one thing, but if it continued for 3 years, the temple would also suspect Oscar was possessed by a demon. This must be the Cressberg Emperor's plan, to ruin Oscar's reputation and let another prince become the heir. Lilia had no choice but to explain to Romeo that there was no demon. He was just seeing things due to shock. It's like having a nightmare. Who knew Romeo would be so persistent, saying Lilia was talking nonsense and making baseless claims? Lilia suddenly felt this kid's intentions were not pure. He acted kind and gentle in front of the original female lead. When Oscar was being maliciously judged, Romeo couldn't understand the other's feelings. Even though Romeo had a similar inner trauma as Oscar, who knew this kid Romeo would be so persistent, telling Lilia to keep talking until he understood. It was then that Lilia realized Romeo must want to know too. After all, he was just a child. So she said to Romeo, "The human mind is very fragile. The brain is weak. But the things inside are not only fragile, but also very stubborn. Once you see a scary image, it will stay in your mind forever. When your body is weak and tired, you will recall that memory. But what if this memory repeatedly appears? A shocking image will appear in your mind for a lifetime. It must be very painful, right? Some people live in pain their whole lives and eventually can't take it, choosing to commit suicide. Suicide is a great sin. It's offering your soul to a demon, an act of betraying the church. That's being possessed by a demon. Traditional morals, what meaning do they have in front of someone who is in so much pain they want to die? After being tortured, a person can't think straight. They feel that only by dying will it all end. Actually, Lilia also knew the reason for Romeo's interest in demons. Romeo had witnessed his mother's suicide. His mother was actually in love with another man, but her parents forbade their relationship. For the sake of power, her parents married her off to the emperor. Fortunately, the emperor was always good to her to win her love. The emperor didn't blame her and waited for her to slowly open her heart. But she couldn't forget her beloved. The relationship between the emperor and empress was distant. Her parents, out of anxiety, chose to threaten their daughter. To save her beloved man, she had to give birth to a crown prince. After Romeo was born, the empress's position became stable. But the empress's parents used this weakness to blackmail their daughter. Whenever they wanted something, they would use the man's life to threaten her. But one day, the empress's beloved man committed suicide. The man couldn't bear to see the empress suffer for a lifetime because of him. The empress fell ill with guilt, and her condition worsened. She experienced hallucinations, auditory hallucinations, and sleepwalking. Instantly, rumors spread that the empress was possessed by a demon. In the end, the empress decided to follow the same fate as her beloved man. She just never expected that Romeo would witness this scene. Romeo, who grew up with the love of a gentle stepmother and his father, although not tormented by hallucinations like Oscar, Lilia knew his inner wounds had not disappeared. His fear of demons was even greater. Lilia looked at this pitiful boy, unable to help but think that one day his inner wounds would be healed. So she said to Romeo, "There are no demons in this world, only those who bring you pain." Who knew Romeo would say, "If you tell the priests and adults about this, you'll probably be treated as a heretic." Only then did Lilia realize she was in big trouble. If news spread that the crown prince was a heretic, the emperor would surely wring her neck. She had no choice. To make this kid obey, Lilia had to threaten him. "If you tell anyone about this, I'll kill you." Romeo was instantly flustered. He was still a child after all, but she couldn't be completely at ease. She had to make this kid understand the chain of command. So she thought of the name Romeo, called Leo in the Mad Dragon subjugation team. "And from now on, you call me Captain, understand?" Romeo was very reluctant. Besides, he was the one who had dirt on her, but he wanted to learn more about demons. In the end, he compromised with the captain. On Oscar's side, the priests were asking, if Prince Leon had hit Oscar. Oscar knew he was trying to help him, but being so young, he couldn't explain himself. He just stammered for a long time and finally said, "He was just trying to help me." At this moment, Lilia felt a little regretful. She shouldn't have taken Romeo as a subordinate. In less than a day, he was already in her room playing. Just then, there was a knock on the door. Under the captain's gaze, the subordinate went to open it. But unexpectedly, the person who came was Oscar. "Kid, I'm asking you why you're here. What kind of royal are you? Are you mute?" Romeo asked arrogantly. "Romeo, since he's here, don't scare him." "Understood, Captain." It turned out Oscar was here to apologize for what happened yesterday. Lilia felt it was a small matter and even took out the snacks Romeo brought to offer to Oscar. Seeing the captain being so nice to this little stutterer, Romeo was very unhappy and came over to say that Oscar was not only crazy but also stuttered. Oscar wrung his little hands and said that he stutters when he's nervous or scared. "You seem to be like that every day, stuttering." At this point, Lilia couldn't take it anymore and stopped Romeo to "Don't go too far. Friends shouldn't make fun of each other." Learning that the captain wanted to be friends with this little stutterer, even though he had said he hated the kid, Romeo angrily left the room. Lilia had to apologize to Oscar for Romeo's rudeness, saying that although Romeo couldn't be considered a good person, he wasn't bad at heart. But Oscar kept wringing his little hands, saying that Romeo was right. He really didn't have any friends. No one would like a stutterer like him. Seeing Oscar, so young, accepting this kind of discrimination and treatment as a matter of course, Lilia couldn't help but feel her heart ache. She comforted Oscar, saying, "How could you not have friends? You could just be friends with me. If I disliked you, why would I have helped you?" Hearing this, Oscar was very moved, but he was curious why Romeo called her captain. Lilia had to explain, "Of course, it's because I'm so cool. He saw me calm you down and was filled with respect." Oscar immediately said that he wanted to call Lilia captain too. Lilia was instantly flustered. She thought of the scene in the original story where Oscar avenged his mother. He killed his own father and became the Blood Emperor. He even said to his father, "Now, if anyone dares to step on me, I'll cut them all down. Father, you are the beginning." She was afraid that if Oscar called her captain now, he would cut her down in the future. But Oscar thought Lilia was hesitating because he stuttered. Helplessly, to comfort Oscar, Lilia agreed to let him call her captain. After getting permission, a smile appeared on Oscar's face. Actually, Lilia had always been worried about being discovered as a girl. But seeing that there were many other pretty boys like Romeo and Oscar, she felt relieved. The next day, as soon as Lilia opened her eyes, she saw Romeo and Oscar waiting for her to go to breakfast together. Along the way, the two bickered jealously. It was a bit conspicuous. Just then, Oscar mentioned an event that night. He heard that everyone was to gather outside. In the Kreutz religion, there's a tradition of making new priests climb a mountain at night. Climbing the mountain together can cultivate a cooperative spirit. It can also eliminate the fear of demons. Although it's a small mountain, it's a long distance for children. The priests told the children to go to a small wooden cabin on the mountainside. Once the children reach the destination, light the candle that purifies demons, and then they can come back. The priest told the children not to be afraid. The priests climb this mountain every day. There are only wild rabbits and squirrels here. The small animals started climbing the mountain in pairs of two. Oscar asked, "Captain, who are you teaming up with?" "Of course I'll go alone." "Romeo, you're in a group with Oscar. You're not scared, are you, Romeo?" Oscar calmly accepted the order. In the end, with his pride on the line, Romeo agreed. Romeo kept confirming repeatedly, "Are there really no demons?" Oscar said that he wasn't afraid of demons at all. Romeo's face flushed red. Even NOV isn't afraid, so he couldn't back down either. It's normal for Oscar not to be afraid, because his father is far more terrifying than these unseen things. It was the same for Lilia. Back then, what he feared most was being forgotten by everyone and dying alone from starvation. To save his own life, Lilia couldn't get any more involved with them. But he couldn't just stand by and watch today's tragedy happen. Because this mountain is not safe tonight. Not because of demons, but because someone deliberately released a fierce beast onto the mountain to harm a child. Even if he said these things, not only would no one believe him, but he would also be targeted by the spy. Lilia wanted to stop this from happening. Meanwhile, with Karis and Griffith, the two of them form a pair. But they got lost and couldn't find the cabin. Both of them were still young at this time. Griffith started blaming Karis, and Karis, angry and not paying attention, tripped. He injured his leg and broke the oil lamp at the same time. The two youths started by blaming each other, which escalated to insults, and finally turned into a fight. Lilia, who was nearby, saw everything. In the end, Griffith abandoned Karis and went on his own. After Griffith left, Karis finally realized that his fall had been quite serious. Just then, a hand reached out from the bushes nearby. Out here in the desolate mountains, it terrified Karis. It turned out to be Lilia, whose clothes were caught on a branch, so he couldn't stand up and could only stick out a hand. But Karis, still thinking it was a demon attacking, delivered a flying kick. He kicked the completely baffled Lilia. After a tragic scream, Karis finally realized it was that idiot who plays the captain game. At this point, Karis, trembling all over, tried to act tough. I didn't expect Prince Leo to be weaker than me. His leg was injured again from the flying kick. Only then did Lilia remember his purpose. He called out to Karis to hurry down the mountain with him, but Karis just lay down on the spot. He said that with his leg like this, they could only wait here until morning. Seeing his nonchalant attitude, Lilia was furious. He had taken a kick from Karis just to save him. Besides, tonight on this mountain, Karis is supposed to lose an arm. Having no choice, Lilia could only reveal the truth. He told Karis that a fierce beast would appear on the mountain. Naturally, Karis didn't believe him. Then, Lilia stated that the beast was released by Karis's uncle. Karis immediately rushed in front of Lilia, demanding to know who he really was and who sent him. Lilia could only raise his palm and state that he was the crown prince of Aurelia, so naturally, he was sent by Aurelia. After thinking it over, Karis finally let go. The Aska Empire, a nation of deserts and sorcery. Because of the emperor's tyranny, the entire country had fallen into ruin. Adults and children suffered immensely from the cruel labor. This was all because of the emperor of Aska. To the tyrannical emperor of Aska, Karis was a thorn in his eye and a thorn in his flesh. The emperor feared that one day, Karis would threaten his throne. Your uncle wants to kill you. He sent the fierce beast to the mountain, Lilia explained, who knew that upon hearing this news, Karis gave up even more. If that's the case, then I might as well die according to my uncle's wish. Then Karis started to drive Lilia away, constantly yelling and telling Lilia to get lost. Lilia believed that he had already interfered and changed the course of the plot, so he couldn't guarantee that things would proceed according to the original story. This time, Karis might not just lose an arm, but could actually die. Actually, he could see that Karis was scared to death, but was also afraid of implicating him. You don't have to say that. I'm leaving anyway. But I'm not leaving alone. Karis, this might get a little rough. You'll have to bear with it. Wait, what are you doing? With a thud, a large stick came down and Karis passed out. Lilia had no choice but to use his small, thin body to carry Karis forward. But he soon discovered a problem. He didn't know the way and could only move forward by the moonlight. Just then, a rustling sound came from the jungle. Just as Lilia was on high alert, thinking the wolves were about to appear, a figure walked out. It was actually Griffith. He questioned what Lilia was doing here. But Lilia had no time to explain right now. He could only tell him that the mountain was dangerous and a fierce beast would appear soon. Obviously, Griffith didn't believe him either. But under Lilia's firm attitude, Griffith still compromised. He also said that he had already found the way. Only then was Lilia surprised to find that the lantern in Griffith's hand actually contained fireflies. He thought that Griffith probably didn't need this. Although he hadn't awakened yet, he was born with divine power and could see clearly even in the dark. So after finding the way, he had come back to find Karis. He even made a lamp. Although Griffith had a sharp tongue, he was probably a good person. In the original story, the two of them must have gotten separated on the road, which led to Karis losing his arm. Suddenly, Griffith seemed to sense something. He turned around to check, only to find a pack of wolves had appeared in the jungle. Before Lilia could react, a wolf attacked him first. In the next second, the wolf's claws left bloody scratches on Lilia's stomach. At this moment, Griffith also reacted, grabbing a branch and standing in front of Lilia. But Lilia told Griffith to blow the whistle around his neck. It was a whistle used by priests. Looking at Lilia's determined eyes, Griffith blew the whistle. In the bushes not far away, the assassin panicked, but he quickly activated a sorcery. The wolf pack attacked, but was blocked by Griffith. But Griffith was powerless to stop the second wolf's attack. His arm was bitten. But just then, a purple light flashed under Griffith's feet. A magic circle was forming beneath him. The wolf pack was forced back. In a life-threatening moment, Griffith had awakened early. Griffith also looked at this sudden power with confusion. At this moment, Karis was also gradually woken up by the purple light. Only then did he clearly see the injured Griffith and Lelia and the wolf pack. So, ignoring Lelia's attempts to stop him, he pushed Lelia aside and jumped down. The wolf pack also received a signal and pounced on Karis. Watching this scene, Lelia was heartbroken. In the original story, Karis lost an arm to the wolf pack, but Karis, with his one remaining arm, wielded a greatsword and became the most active warrior in the subjugation team. But the sacrifice he made was irreversible. So Lelia thought, at the very least, he had to make sure he only lost the arm he was supposed to lose tonight. But at this moment, Karis made a sound. What the hell is this? He had killed a wolf with his bare hands. Then he collapsed to the ground. He then complained, "You should have told me they were real wolves. I told you they were real, you idiot." Then one by one, the wolves turned into sand. The assassin probably realized he couldn't kill them and destroy the evidence. Only then did Griffith realize that blowing the whistle was meant to scare the enemy away. And Karis also recognized this as sorcery that uses sand. Learning that his own uncle truly wanted to kill him, Karis broke down and cried. Lelia couldn't think of anything to comfort him. "Get on my back. It's still not safe here." Griffith also realized the seriousness of the situation and offered to carry Karis, but Lelia refused him. Helpless, to save time, Karis jumped onto Lelia's back. He was curious why his left ankle was injured, but his right ankle hurt so much. Lelia quickly apologized, because after he knocked Karis out and was carrying him, he accidentally stepped on his right foot. Griffith found it amusing. They had almost died just now, yet they could still laugh. In the camp, Oscar was very worried. The sun was up, but he still hadn't seen the captain. Then a figure walked out of the woods. It was Lelia, but the next second, he collapsed and fainted. Lelia slowly opened his eyes. Oscar and Romeo were looking at him with concern. As soon as he was conscious, Lelia sat up and asked about the condition of the other two. Oscar told him that after they received treatment, they went to see the high priest. Just then, Romeo brought a priest over. The priest looked very gentle. He considerately asked if Lelia felt any discomfort. But then, he fell into a panic, because all the wounds on his body were healed. His clothes had also been changed. At this rate, wouldn't the fact that he was born a girl be exposed? The emperor would definitely kill him. But the priest leaned in and whispered to him that a priestess had changed his clothes. No one else saw anything, and he would keep it a secret and not tell anyone. Then, under Lelia's puzzled gaze, he left the infirmary. But right after, Griffith and Karis came to the infirmary. Both of their injuries had completely healed. Griffith advised Lelia to go see the high priest, because they planned to use this opportunity to launch a protest. Since such a major incident had occurred, the priest had a responsibility to inform all the countries about it and investigate thoroughly. But the victim's own uncle, the Emperor of Aska, wanted to hush the matter up. Therefore, the other empires couldn't say much either. In the end, the temple wanted to apologize to all the countries, promising to be more careful in looking after the children in the future. But what would Karis, who had lost an arm, be feeling? Actually, in the original story, Karis also knew it was his uncle who wanted to kill him, but he didn't tell anyone, nor could he seek help from others. So Lelia decided not to speak of this matter and to act as if it never happened. Karis was very surprised, while the others didn't understand. Why keep such a serious matter a secret? Helpless, Lelia had to make up a story, because his father doted on him too much, kissing him every day and even holding him to sleep. If he found out about this, he would definitely throw a tantrum and refuse to go kill some mad dragon or something. This lie was so ridiculous that Lelia himself almost threw up. Therefore, he begged everyone not to speak of this matter, and even offered to grant each of them one wish. Seeing Lelia say this, everyone agreed. But only Romeo disagreed. He couldn't stand the fact that the captain was injured. But after a scolding from Lelia, he once again ran out of the room, aggrieved. Oscar had to persuade Lelia to let Romeo calm down first. At this moment, Griffith and Karis asked why Romeo called Lelia captain. Lelia had to explain that they insisted on calling him that. So, the two of them, moved by Lelia, also decided to call Lelia captain. A few days later, the parties involved in the danger requested secrecy. The priests were as happy as if a pie had fallen from the sky, and even came personally to bow their heads in thanks. guaranteeing that such an incident would not happen again and promising a thorough investigation of the culprit. But Lilia knew that even with an investigation, nothing would be found, because this was something orchestrated by a high priest, in collusion with the emperor of the Aske Empire. Without evidence, no one would be punished. After that, they returned to their peaceful daily lives. Except this time, Lilia had 2 more followers, and they all moved into Lilia's room. Lilia, who was born a girl, naturally refused. Lilia was very troubled because he still had to endure these days for another 3 years. In the time that followed, Lilia, as expected, became the center of attention. After all, he was the child called captain by 4 princes. Not only did he gain a group of young female fans, but he was also approached by a girl who admired him. His dream of being a background character was completely shattered, and all of this was because of that royal gang of 4 who were like leeches. No matter where he went, the 4 of them followed. And today, to shake off his clingy followers, Lilia woke up early for breakfast. And the reason this girl approached him was actually to ask if Griffith had ever mentioned her to Lilia. It turned out the girl was Griffith's fiancé, but Griffith was a bit cold towards her. Lilia wanted to pretend he wasn't close with Griffith to get through the topic. But just then, the leeches, now awake, found him again. And the girl, seeing her fiancé among the gang of 4, blushed and immediately ran away. The gang of 4 also noticed the girl who was just talking to the captain and immediately started gossiping about her identity. Only then did they learn that she was Griffith's fiancé. Karis was very surprised to hear this, while Griffith was curious. Don't they have fiancés? Apparently, Karis, who was disliked by the emperor, and Oscar did not have fiancés. But Griffith and Romeo both had fiancés. At this point, they asked about the captain, who was so doted on by his father. He must have a fiancé too, right? This stumped Lilia. He had no idea whether Leo had a fiancé or not, and it wasn't written in the novel either. In the end, he could only explain that perhaps because he was frail, his father hadn't told him and managed to bluff his way through. But Karis was skeptical because Lilia had carried him down from the mountain all by himself. Lilia explained that it was a crisis situation and he had forgotten his fatigue. Besides, Karis should be grateful to him. He had even brought out such strength to save him. At this point, Romeo asked if it were him who was injured, would the captain save him? Even Oscar pressed him on this question. Lilia could only keep fending them off. But while everyone was joking and playing around, Lilia noticed that Griffith was very quiet. He, like the other 3, followed Lilia around, but he was actually very cold towards Lilia. So he also promised Griffith that if he were the one injured, he would definitely save him too. That night, while everyone was sleeping soundly, Oscar suddenly sat up, making sounds of pain. It seemed his previous condition was acting up again. He couldn't help but think, "Help me, Captain." The next day, Romeo suggested they not stay in the room all the time and go out to play once in a while to the commercial street in the sacred neutral zone. Lilia doubted the priests would let them go out, but Romeo said that by not leaking the incident from last time, they had indirectly grasped a weakness of the temple. Therefore, not only could they go out, but the temple would also arrange guards for them. But Oscar didn't want to go out. He said he was sleepy and wanted to stay and sleep, and that the rest of them should just go. Only then did Lilia remember that Oscar was afraid of crowded places, not only because of the trauma caused by his father, but also because he was afraid of interacting with people. Lilia wanted to help Oscar, thought it a good idea. He called out to the others, "Let's go. Let's all go out and play." But Romeo, who just a moment ago found Oscar off-putting, suddenly hesitated. It was obvious he didn't want to leave Oscar behind, but Lilia had his plan. So the group arrived at the commercial street. It was very lively and bustling here, although not comparable to the streets in the prince's home countries. And as expected, the temple had sent 5 holy knights to guard them. At this moment, Lilia found a shop he wanted to go to. It was this toy and stuffed doll shop, and what Lilia had his eye on was a small pink bunny doll. Romeo couldn't help but complain, "You're not a girl. Why are you buying a doll?" But Lilia retorted, "Who says only girls can like stuffed dolls?" But after asking around, he found that no one had brought any money. Only Griffith generously offered a helping hand. Lilia happily picked up 2 bunny dolls. The reason he bought the dolls was that in the original story, the heroine Juliana gave Oscar a small teddy bear. Oscar, who was called the Red-Eyed Monster and killed his own father to ascend the throne, slowly overcame the nightmares that had been tormenting him while thinking of Juliana, who wasn't afraid of him and gave him a stuffed doll. Although he didn't know if a gift not given by the heroine would have any effect. Seeing Lilia holding 2 dolls, the other 2 realized that the other one was for Oscar. They both turned to Griffith for help. They wanted dolls too. Griffith, helpless, agreed to their request. Lilia was very happy because he both want to help Oscar, and Lilia himself also really wanted teddy bear. And the second plot line related to the doll was about the original story's heroine, Juliana. She was a gentle girl loved by all, but she didn't start out living in a happy environment. On the contrary, her biological father was an abusive man who mistreated her. This painful life continued until she met a certain person. And that person was someone everyone thought was already dead. The former emperor of the Aurelia Empire, Perseus Aurelia. Perseus, after falling into his younger brother Ladius's trap, lost his beloved wife and newborn daughter. After having his throne stolen, he lived in hiding with his twin princes for a long time. Juliana's mother, as an accomplice who helped Perseus reclaim his throne, became his wife. It was a contractual marriage. Thus, Juliana became the emperor's daughter. Perseus gathered his former ministers and those dissatisfied with Ladius's regime and finally reclaimed his throne, executing his younger brother Ladius. By this time, Prince Leo was already dead. Juliana became the empire's only princess and lived a dreamlike life. She wanted to get closer to Emperor Perseus. Those were happy times she couldn't spend with her biological father. Juliana, wanting to be like a normal child, tried to hold her father's hand, but Perseus unconsciously shook the child's hand away. The poor, heartbroken Juliana became despondent. Perseus felt the same way as she did, so he prepared a gift for Juliana, a teddy bear. Then he apologized and begged for Juliana's forgiveness. Learning that her father didn't hate her, Juliana easily revealed the child's innocent smile. Through this incident, Perseus and the 2 older brothers grew to completely adore Juliana. From then on, they constantly sent her gifts. Meanwhile, Lilia was still living in a tower without a single ray of light. After her life of pretending to be Leo at the temple ended, what awaited Lilia was the same life in the tower as before. The ministers held meetings every day to discuss how to deal with Lilia, but they never reached a conclusion. Perseus also grew tired of the meetings that made no progress. In the end, he didn't even want to hear Lilia's name anymore. He pushed the matter aside and simply let Lilia continue living in the tower. He didn't care at all that his own sister's daughter was suffering from hunger. But that was to be expected, because Lilia's mother, Princess Iris, was the villain who had tortured Perseus's deceased wife, Elizabeth. Juliana, the bright and lovely girl who had everything, and Lilia, who had nothing and wore a face of bitter suffering. Because of her hunger, she had no energy to become the villainess who cruelly bullied Juliana. She was a supporting character with no role in the plot. To survive, she would sneak out to find fruit in the forest behind the main castle. Until one day, she came across Juliana resting under a tree. Due to her constant hunger, she stole Juliana's food. When she saw the stuffed doll in Juliana's arms, she was drawn in by its sweet scent and was overcome with greed. She knew she was doing something she shouldn't. But even so, she still wanted to hold that stuffed doll, a symbol of love. But she was quickly caught by the twin princes. Even after she returned the doll to Juliana, the twin princes were relentless. They made her kowtow and apologize 100 times. Lilia kowtowed from dawn until dusk, until Perseus dotingly picked Juliana up and carried her back. No one spared Lilia a single glance. In the original story, Lilia was just such a girl, unloved by anyone. The group returned to the temple. Oscar was waiting for them, all alone and lonely. Suddenly, a stuffed rabbit was thrust in Oscar's face. Lilia had gone out just to buy this doll. He told Oscar that the doll could help him, share his sorrow and sadness, and always protect his heart. The others at the side, though constantly teasing their captain for being childish, ended up buying matching dolls for themselves. That night, Lilia no longer envied Juliana, because she finally had a treasure that was hers alone. That night, thunder roared. Rain poured in torrents. Romeo, who tossed and turned in his sleep, unintentionally rolled off the bed and noticed something was wrong with Oscar. It seemed he was having another episode. He immediately woke Lilia. Lilia rushed to Oscar's side at once and soothed Oscar's emotions. It turned out that whenever it rained, Oscar would be reminded of his mother. Although Lilia knew the doll couldn't possibly be effective right away, he still comforted Oscar. From now on, whenever you're scared, just talk to the doll as if you were talking to him. The other 3 were also startled by Oscar. Lilia had no choice but to explain to the others that the reason Oscar became like this was due to psychological trauma. Everyone has something they're afraid of. Just then, Griffith asked what Lilia was most afraid of. Lilia wanted to say it was hunger, but it would be strange for a prince to say that. So he said he was afraid of the citizens going hungry. Griffith immediately shot him a look of admiration. As expected of the crown prince, he's on another level. Oscar was clearly most afraid of his father, while Romeo was most afraid of demons. Griffith, however, wouldn't admit to being afraid of anything. Just as Callus was about to say, he feared nothing. Oscar naively declared that he knew what Callus was afraid of, girls, because a girl had tried to talk to him before, and he had run away in a panic. Callus, furious and embarrassed, wanted to hit Oscar, but was held back by the others. The scene made Lilia laugh. Then, Romeo suggested that they could now talk about what they liked. That night, they talked a lot about what they liked and disliked, what they were good at, and what they weren't, as if to make up for all the time they hadn't known each other. Paying no mind to the rain and thunder outside, they laughed happily until dawn. That day became a turning point. The five of them grew even closer. They celebrated each other's birthdays and spent all the Empire's holidays together. As the seasons changed in a flash, their relationship could now be called a friendship. Time flew by, and before Lilia knew it, 2 years had passed. Your Highness, Crown Prince Leo, please accept this. Faced with the girl's confession, Lilia was increasingly composed. Thank you. I will treasure it. His gentle treatment made the girl's heart flutter. The other princes had also grown up a lot in the past 2 years. Even Oscar was no longer a little boy, but had the appearance of a young man. He also handed Lilia a letter. Everyone was very surprised, but it was actually a letter for Lilia from the priests. It was then that Lilia realized that even Oscar, who was once a pipsqueak, had grown so tall. Captain Lilia's authority was shattered to pieces. Moreover, the other's swordsmanship had become increasingly superb. It seemed only Lilia was being left behind. Opening the envelope alone, Lilia discovered the letter was from Emperor Ladius of the Olaria Empire. After reading the letter, Lilia clenched her fists tightly. Later, when faced with the other's invitation to eat together, Lilia not only gave them the cold shoulder, but also slapped away Callus's outstretched hand. Then she left all alone. It turned out there was no special content in the letter. It only said, "Don't forget your place. Behave yourself." It was a warning written out of fear that the secret would be leaked. It seems that even with the silencing magic, the Emperor was very uneasy. But those few short sentences were enough to remind Lilia of her situation. The fake crown Prince Leo. In the past 2 years, the group had talked about so much, but not a single word from Lilia was true. Her name, status, and gender were all fake. Because after they separated in a year, everyone would learn of Crown Prince Leo's death. At first, Lilia thought she would just stay here for 3 years, and since she would never see them again anyway, it would be fine. That's what she had thought. But the days spent with everyone were just too happy. At some point, Lilia began to wish that this life could continue. So much so that at some point, she had even forgotten that she was an imposter. And when they learned of her death, how would they react? Being so kind, they would surely be heartbroken. Rather than that, it would be better to cut ties now, to create distance. But just then, the others had already come to Lilia's room. They knew something must have happened to Lilia for her to act this way, and they were determined to help her. Besides, it was Lilia who taught Oscar that they could rely on each other when facing difficulties. Lilia was deeply moved, but she still couldn't tell them the truth. She could only tell them that if she were to die, she hoped they wouldn't be sad. Callus thought that even if they went home, they could still meet in the frenzied dragon subjugation team. And as her older brother, he would definitely protect Lilia and never let anyone hurt her. But Lilia said that she might not join the frenzied dragon subjugation team. She might die before then. She hoped that they would all fight safely and return triumphantly. Hearing their captain say this, Oscar burst into tears. He didn't want his captain to die. Although Oscar was a crybaby now, in the future, after obtaining the long-sealed magic sword, Oscar would become an immortal being. Although he was a one-armed berserker in the original story, he could freely wield a greatsword that no one else could lift. The mercenary king, Callus, possessed a divine power stronger than the Holy Emperor of Kreutz, the master of the Holy Sword, Griffith, and the one who obtained the dragon's heart, the youngest magic tower master in history, the Dragon Eye Mage, Romeo. And finally, Lelia, full of lies and amounting to nothing. She felt incredibly proud to have become friends with these future heroes, but that also made her sad. Why was she by their side? The next day, when she came to her senses, Lelia realized how embarrassing it was that she had cried so much. But she had also figured things out. There were only 6 months left to stay at the temple. It wasn't too late. She should make more memories with everyone, even though they might never see each other again. And today was Griffith's birthday. Everyone gave him gifts. Exchanging letters had become a custom among them. They could enjoy cake to their heart's content, with important friends by their side. However, once Lelia returned to her country, all of this would end. Although she was reluctant, Lelia had to start thinking about what would happen after she returned to the Empire. First, she had to figure out how to prevent her own death. She should be able to avoid that if she was a little careful. But the real problem was the things she couldn't solve herself. The deaths of the current Emperor, Ladius, and Crown Prince Leo, and the return of the former Emperor, Perseus, and the matter of the 4 of them joining the frenzied dragon subjugation team. In that battle, Callus suffered an irreversible injury, because only the greatsword that Callus could wield was embedded with the holy relic gem the Kreutz Order was looking for. Only that sword had the power to pierce the dragon's scales. In the heat of battle, Callus used that sword to pierce the frenzied dragon's vital point, the inverted scale. In the end, the frenzied dragon fell, and peace was restored to the world. But due to the frenzied dragon's counterattack, Callus's entire body was burned, and his bones and flesh began to melt. If not for Griffith's divine power, he might have died on the spot. Thanks to Griffith using all his strength to heal him, most of his wounds recovered. But the one thing that couldn't be healed was his eyes. At the same time, the people of the Aska Empire, who had long suffered under tyranny, also longed for a new emperor. They hoped Callus, who had defeated the frenzied dragon and become a hero, would drive out the tyrant and save them. Until they saw Callus's eyes. The symbol of the Aska royal family was golden eyes, the son of heaven's eyes that could see through everything. So the people began to avoid him, saying Callus was cursed by the frenzied dragon. They praised him as a hero to his face, but behind his back, they said he was cursed and feared him. No one wanted Callus to become emperor. Even when treated like this, Callus didn't resent anyone. So as not to make people afraid or uncomfortable, he even covered his eyes with a black cloth. But the original story's heroine, Juliana, gently comforted Callus. She didn't think he was cursed. How could the eyes that saved everyone in the world be a curse? After that day, Callus became one of Juliana's backup love interests. Although this relationship never became official, in the end, Callus left everything behind and wandered the world again. Lelia was furious about this ending. Lelia searched through the original story, but couldn't find any way to change Callus's fate. Only Callus could deal the fatal blow to the frenzied dragon. To strike the inverted scale, he had to bear the consequences with his own body. Even knowing this in advance, there was still nothing she could do. Unable to do anything for Callus, Lelia was very sad. She couldn't help but fantasize that if only she had magic like the heroine, it would be great. But she couldn't feel any mana at all. To use magic, one needed the power of nature, which is mana. People with high mana affinity absorb mana and, through training, channel it into their weapons and bodies to strengthen them. These people are called aura swordsmen. People who can cast spells using mana through gestures are called mages. But the transmigrated heroine couldn't feel mana at all. She couldn't help but place her hopes in alchemy. But this world prohibited the power of the other side. Among them, the Philosopher's Stone, which can grant any wish, and the legendary Panacea, which can heal all injuries and diseases and even bring the dead back to life. The ultimate goal of alchemy is to create these two, a stone comparable to the holy relics of the Order, and an elixir of immortality with the strongest healing ability. Although no alchemist has yet been able to create these two, the Order believes that alchemy itself is a provocation against God, so alchemy is strictly forbidden. But there are still many people who need the potions made by alchemists. Although alchemy is dangerous, it can make money. And with the Panacea, she could heal Callus's eyes. But in her current situation, she might slowly starve to death in the tower. Suddenly, she thought of former Empress Elizabeth's secret base. That was the place where Elizabeth, a mage, immersed herself in research. A secret place specially prepared by the Emperor. In that small cabin, there were some magical items made by Elizabeth and emergency rations preserved by magic. In the original story, this place was given to the heroine by Perseus as a gift. As long as she could find it before Juliana, she wouldn't have to worry about food. The next day, Romeo brought a magical pen for the group. As long as someone wrote on it, the others would all receive the message. Lilia was overjoyed because with this, before the official announcement of the Crown Prince's death, she could still communicate with everyone. And today was special. Everyone had prepared a cake for Lilia. However, just as everyone was happily congratulating him, he burst into tears. Because today was not the birthday of Prince Leo, whom he was playing, but his own birthday. Because this was the last time, Lilia became greedy and requested a birthday celebration. Although no one knew whose birthday it was, they were all willing to celebrate together. This led them to believe that the captain was celebrating for someone like his deceased mother. Afterwards, they all showed sad expressions. It was then that Lilia remembered that none of them had mothers. Oscar's father had killed his birth mother. Callus's parents passed away one after another after he was born. Griffith had no birth mother, only a stepmother who hated him. Romeo's mother committed suicide in front of him. Seeing this, Lilia immediately started digging in. Everyone quickly realized that if they didn't eat, Lilia would snatch it all. Later, the group went to the mountaintop. Lilia no longer wanted to waste time on sadness and crying. She decided not to cry anymore, because there were only a few days left to be with them. She wanted to do more things with her teammates, see more beautiful scenery, so that whenever she looked back, she would only remember each other's smiling faces. So you all should remember my smiling face too. I was very happy being with everyone. Thank you all. It was so great to have met you. On this day, carriages from all the countries arrived in front of the temple. The day of parting had finally come. Fortunately, Oscar was there to cry with Lilia. Seeing the somber atmosphere, Romeo made an unexpected move. He hugged everyone one by one. Thinking back, Romeo had initially kept saying he hated everyone. Thinking of this, Lilia couldn't help but laugh. And Romeo was also the one who respected him the most from the very beginning. Just like that, after bidding farewell to her friends one by one, Lilia boarded a carriage, not knowing where it was headed. Lilia felt they would never meet again, because even if the emperor died, the curse would always be with her. But this memory could support her to walk a longer path. On the way back to his country, Callus didn't expect that when he finally told everyone he wanted to be a mercenary. Only the captain didn't object and even gave his approval. This way, after returning home, he wasn't afraid at all of his uncle and aunt who were constantly plotting against him, because the captain believed in him. Then I'll become the strongest mercenary, Callus thought. And at this moment, their captain was once again sent back to that tower. The king knew about this, but he didn't have Lilia killed. Instead, he had her watched, thinking she might be useful later. Lilia also made up her mind to live on, no matter what. The next morning, the first thing Lilia did after waking up was to write to her friends. She wrote about her extravagant life after returning to the palace. I just finished the meal served by the servants. It's much tastier than at the temple. The bed is also much more comfortable than at the temple. But the reality was the complete opposite. She could only eat fruits and vegetables to fill her stomach. And the winters here were very cold, making Lilia shiver. Lilia had to live by herself. Even though the smoke from the damp branches made it hard to open her eyes, it was better than freezing to death. She wanted to go directly to the secret cabin, but the emperor had sent spies. Acting rashly might cost her life. Lilia could only wait for the right time, because at this point in the plot, the real Leo would be poisoned by someone close to him. Soon after, Perseus would lead a rebel army to attack the imperial city. So she didn't want to do anything conspicuous until Perseus took the throne, because he didn't care about Lilia. It's just that after Leo died, she wouldn't be able to write to her friends anymore. However, after busying herself, Lilia found that her friends hadn't replied. Lilia was a little sad. She had to go out first to gather branches to burn. It wasn't until the snow was falling heavily that Lilia returned to the tower. She took a hot bath to stay warm. Just then, she noticed the letter on the table was glowing. It turned out her friends had replied. Oscar didn't have any nightmares after going back. It was all thanks to the stuffed rabbit. As for Callus, he acted like the doll was childish, but he actually kept it under his pillow, the position closest to him. Meanwhile, Griffith was complaining. He said he shouldn't have bought Callus a doll if he had known. Romeo missed everyone very much. He even wanted to go with them to subjugate the Mad Dragon. Seeing that everyone was still the same as before, Lilia was very happy. Afterwards, Lilia moved the quilt next to the fire. She huddled completely under the thin quilt. Hugging the rabbit doll, she silently shed tears. After some time, the harsh winter finally passed. Fortunately, the accumulated snow melted quickly. Lilia's food and firewood had not yet run out. At this time, Lilia discovered that the person monitoring her had disappeared. At this time, in the imperial palace, a servant was talking to the emperor's confidant. After the conversation ended, the servant was holding a bottle of purple liquid. Several months passed. The snow had completely melted, and the weather began to warm up. Lilia had finally survived the winter. But because she was afraid of the emperor's surveillance, she still didn't venture too far from the tower. Nor was she able to find Elizabeth's small wooden cabin. However, this spring, Leo would die, and Lilia would no longer be able to write letters. Throughout the winter, whenever she had time, she would sit at her desk and read the letters everyone sent. The group had already become her spiritual support. Just then, a voice came from outside. It turned out to be knights discussing. Someone had poisoned the prince's food, and that person had already been caught by the emperor and locked up. Lilia trembled, because she hadn't expected Leo to be done for so quickly. She hurried back inside the tower. She wanted to hide all these letters. Even with the curse on her, she still wanted to try and see if there was a way to leave some clues, to let everyone know that Leo was dead. The person who had been with them all along was actually none other than Lilia. But even in a letter, she couldn't reveal her identity. She couldn't tell them anything. Just then, the sounds of horse hooves and shouting were incessant outside. Lilia realized, could it be that the rebellion had already begun? At this moment, Perseus's great army had arrived at the city walls, and the soldiers would soon break into this tower. Time was short. Lilia could only leave a clue in the letter. She wrote down her name, Lilia Olaria. She believed her clever companions would be able to notice something. Then, she removed the magic stone from the quill. She put all the letters and the brush, pen into a box, and hid it under a tree. Then she hid inside the wardrobe. Trembling, she awaited everything that was to come. The sounds of fighting lasted for 2 days. On this day, someone finally pulled open the wardrobe. The new emperor, Perseus, was summoning Lilia. Iris Olaria. She was the sister of Ladius and Perseus, the only princess of the Olaria Empire. She was the noblest woman in the empire. Perseus married Elizabeth. Iris hated Elizabeth, who had the same status as her, and tried every means to torment her. When Elizabeth gave birth to the twin princes who had the right to the throne, this hatred reached its peak. But at the same time, that beloved person appeared in Iris's life. She fell in love with a commoner knight. Unfortunately, the knight passed away early, but Iris was pregnant with the knight's child. When Iris was ready to give birth, Elizabeth was also about to go into labor. At that moment, Perseus happened to be on an expedition, and the emperor at the time had just collapsed. The husband's expedition and the emperor's death were a conspiracy by Perseus's brother to obtain the throne. Elizabeth, who discovered this, immediately dismissed all her attendants and gave birth to the child alone. But she knew that Ladius would never let Perseus's child go. If the child stayed by her side, it would be a dead end. But she couldn't think of anyone in this imperial city who could help her. So she found Iris, who had once tormented her, but had become a mother on the same day. At this time, Iris was in despair. Her child had died just after birth. She thought Elizabeth had come to mock her for what she had brought upon herself. Who would have thought that Elizabeth would kneel and beg her to take this child? Iris, whose jealousy was at an all-time high, originally wanted to curse or even kill Elizabeth and her child. But she was stunned when she heard Lilia's cries. Looking at this child, in whom the blood of the Olaria family flowed, her heart softened and she decided to accept the child. And Elizabeth took away Iris's dead baby boy. Afterwards, the unstoppable Ladius poisoned Elizabeth, and Iris fell ill due to a mental illness and never recovered. She had long foreseen her own end, so she entrusted the child to the only maid who knew the truth. Although the maid didn't tell the secret to anyone and took care of the child, one day she disappeared. She also stole the princess's jewelry. It was because she heard that her parents back home had been imprisoned as heretics. She did it to save her parents. Then she fled the country, causing the secret to disappear from the empire. Afterwards, Lilia was brought before Perseus Olaria, and he was Lilia's biological father. Due to the plot's setup, Perseus was greatly hurt, and the reason for all this foreshadowing was to prepare for the female protagonist. It was prepared for the female protagonist to heal him. and the character of Lelia only existed to remind Perseus of his wounds. As expected, Perseus only glanced at Lelia before having her taken away. In the original novel, it wasn't until after Lelia drowned that the wet nurse returned to the palace and told Perseus Lelia's identity. This made Perseus fall into despair once again. Here, no one would help Lelia, and without any proof, no one would believe these things. She was perfectly clear. She couldn't hold on to foolish expectations and place her hopes in others. However, just as Lelia was walking through the palace, she ran into the twin princes. Just like in the original novel, they detested the daughter of the princess who bullied their mother. They hurled insults at Lelia. "You tormented our mother and caused our younger brother's death." They blamed everything on Lelia. "How do you still have the face to live in this world, you murderer's daughter?" Until Juliana appeared. The two immediately changed their attitude, doting on their younger sister. After returning to the tower, Lelia could only talk to her doll, speaking of how much she missed her companions. She forced herself to be clear-headed. The only person who could protect her now was herself. And now was the best time to go to Elizabeth's cabin. Since no one was watching, Lelia quickly found a small wooden cabin. She didn't expect the inside of the cabin to be so clean. It seemed someone was managing this place. Lelia couldn't help but imagine what kind of person her mother would be if she were still alive. If she were still alive, she would surely protect Lelia with her life. Soon, under the cabin floor, she found Elizabeth's food storehouse. Elizabeth had personally developed a food preservation magic that could keep food for 100 years. Although it looked empty, food would appear if you broke the bottles. But Lelia did not find Elizabeth's magical tools. Moreover, it seemed someone was always cleaning this place. She couldn't stay long. Lelia took the food and left. Unfortunately, she ran into Juliana again. Through Juliana's conversation, she learned that this was the period when Perseus was refusing to take charge. And this was also the period when everyone was discussing how to deal with Lelia so that she wouldn't become a tool for a political marriage. Lelia could only try to find Elizabeth's magic tools quickly. At this moment, the twins were practicing swordsmanship with their uncle Kaluz. Callus was a bit absent-minded, as if he had remembered something. Then he apologized to his two nephews. He might not be able to practice swords with them tomorrow, because every time he came to the imperial city, he had to go to a certain place. Kaluz Hyperion was Elizabeth's younger brother. He had been very sad since his sister's death. At the same time, he was very dissatisfied with Perseus for marrying a new empress and raising a new daughter. Cherishing the memory of his sister, he came to that small wooden cabin, and he was the one who had been cleaning the cabin all along. But when he arrived again today, he discovered that someone had broken in. Kaluz was surprised by the girl's appearance. After the matter was exposed, what Lelia had to face was Perseus's wrath. He questioned Lelia about how she knew of that place. But after learning that Lelia had run to the cabin simply because she was hungry, Perseus finally realized that no one here was sending food to Lelia, and Lelia hadn't stolen anything from the cabin. He then stated that he would send people to deliver food to Lelia from now on, but she was forbidden from going to the cabin again. Otherwise, he would make her follow in Iris's footsteps. But how could Lelia obey? To escape the imperial city, she needed the magic tools Elizabeth left behind, so she could only be more careful afterwards. Fortunately, after that, a maid really did come to deliver food every day, although the delivery times were unpredictable. And this time, the maid reminded her that she couldn't come tomorrow because of a banquet, so this was 2 days' worth of food. Lelia realized her chance had finally come. Today's banquet was actually the day Juliana and the male lead would meet, and there was a small incident in between. A noble boy at the banquet pushed Juliana, causing her to cut her palm. Therefore, everyone's attention was on the party, so Lelia had to seize the opportunity to find the magic tools. After the banquet ended, the 3 siblings were strolling in the woods. The twins suggested going to see the stars, and the best spot for stargazing was this tower. After they entered the tower, they unknowingly arrived at Lelia's room. Lelia's toy doll attracted Juliana, and Lelia, who was returning, happened to see this scene. Lelia couldn't help but remember that this was the only symbol of their precious memories. Lelia, in a fit of agitation, pushed Juliana away, and this push actually broke the skin on Juliana's hand. Just as the twin brothers were about to scold Lelia, they were interrupted by Juliana. She admitted it was her own fault. She just thought the doll was too cute, and couldn't resist picking it up for a look. Then she handed the doll in her hand to Lelia. Juliana smiled and asked for her name, saying she seemed to have seen her before. In the novel, Juliana was just as gentle to the Lelia who wanted to steal her doll. Juliana didn't see Lilia as a thief, and it was Lilia who had hurt her first, yet she was still so kind to Lilia. Compared to Juliana, Lilia felt there was nothing more tragic or shameful than this. Lilia loudly said, "I'm sorry," to Juliana, but the twins told Juliana, "She's the daughter of the woman who tormented our mother to death. There's no need to apologize to someone like that. Now that I think about it, who do we think lived here?" It turns out to be the murderer's daughter, actually living such a good life. And they wanted to take over the place where Lilia lived and use it for stargazing from then on. And they made Lilia kowtow and apologize to Juliana 100 times. Juliana tried to stop them, but she couldn't stand up against her two brothers' insistence. In the end, it still turned out this way. But in the novel, the three of them had never come at night. And the one who hurt Juliana wasn't Lilia either. But in order to survive, Lilia groveled before Juliana. In the end, the twins had the servants clean the place up. Afterwards, Lilia left with her luggage. She arrived at the wooden cabin from before. Lilia didn't know what would happen next. If Emperor Perseus found out, would he kill her? Or would he arrange a new residence for her? Maybe he would make Lilia marry a stranger and be monitored for the rest of her life. Lilia took out the letters written by her companions and looked at their conversations. In one line from Romeo about missing her made Lilia break down, her tears flowing freely. At least she still had friends who cared about her. Suddenly, a flash of light appeared. Lilia wiped her tears and discovered the beam of light was under the cabinet. The moment she touched it with her hand, Lilia discovered it was actually a hidden secret door. After pushing open the hidden door, Lilia found a pocket watch on the floor. This watch was the very same one that Juliana showed off to Emperor Hyperion in the novel. She had said she found it in Elizabeth's small wooden cabin. Juliana turned the single hand of the watch under the moonlight, and the watch granted her one wish. Actually, there were two of these pocket watches, and they only became a holy relic when combined. Although it had lost half its power, the power it contained was still immense. Juliana's fated lover, the male lead, found a remaining pocket watch. Then the male lead turned the watch hand and made a wish, "I want to become stronger." And just like that, the weak male lead gained power and joined the Mad Dragon subjugation team. The pocket watch was a holy relic born from the crew's religion, so it couldn't grant wishes like bringing the dead back to life. In other words, not all wishes could be granted, and for every wish made, a corresponding price had to be paid. Even so, it should be easy for Lilia to break the Ladius family's silencing magic. If she broke the silencing magic, she wanted to immediately write to her friends or go find them in person. She would apologize to them and tell them she was truly sorry for deceiving them all these years. Lilia really liked them. In her previous life, she had never missed anyone this much. Suddenly, Lilia was lost in a memory. She saw her father holding Juliana while she could only silently endure the loneliness. No, this wasn't her memory. At this moment, to avoid repeating the same mistakes, Lilia had no other choice. She picked up the pocket watch in her hand and began to wish for the silencing spell to be broken. She was instantly plunged back into Lilia's memories. She was at the bottom of the lake, unable to breathe. When Lilia woke up, she found herself in the present, but that memory was so real. Lilia knew her death was no accident. It was the memory of actively throwing herself into the river. Lilia didn't know if the wish had been granted. To confirm if the curse was broken, she had to say to someone that Leo was Lilia to see if the silencing spell was gone. On the other hand, if the magic wasn't broken, she would lose her life. Lilia felt some regret. Risking her life like this was too impulsive. Suddenly, Lilia heard the low, ringing sound again. She then discovered the sound was coming from the drawer. Lilia found it strange. This necklace wasn't here before. Curious, Lilia touched the crystal on it with her hand. Suddenly, a purple light appeared. Above her head, the words "System Optimization Complete" floated. Suddenly, an inner voice told Lilia, "Optimization is finally complete. Thank you for waiting for me. New recipes have been added according to the environment. Master, please confirm." Before possessing Lilia, the female protagonist was still on her sickbed. A sick body, a life whose end she could see. Her parents died early, and her relatives despised her, waiting for her to die so they could seize her inheritance. The female protagonist suffered greatly because of this. No one in the world cared about her, so she could only play games, and she was the best player in this game. She had even obtained the title of Legendary Alchemist. Great alchemist who commands 3 dragons. You have obtained the above title. The upgrade was completed with the final achievement reward. You can now create the Philosopher's Stone. The female protagonist discovered she was level 100 and the first person to complete the final achievement. A green gemstone appeared on her phone screen. The system below was even more excited than the female protagonist and told her to use the Philosopher's Stone, which could grant any wish. The female protagonist made a wish. With the alchemist title, items, alchemy tools, and those dragons that I currently possess, let me be reincarnated into the alchemy gacha game. At this, the scene fell silent. The female protagonist thought she was a fool. She must have read too many reincarnation novels. The female protagonist recalled the novel she had finished a few days ago. There was still a bit of joy left, but she didn't want to read a new one. Suddenly, there was nothing she wanted to do. She felt she had no more regrets in this life. The female protagonist wiped her tears and fell asleep. Her last words were, "I want to live." It seemed the Philosopher's Stone reacted. At this moment, the female protagonist's consciousness had already left her body. Suddenly, she was sucked in by a strong light. It turned out this was the whole process of her reincarnation. The female protagonist remembered now. The reason the female protagonist could be reincarnated was because of the Philosopher's Stone. But why hadn't it appeared before? The female protagonist suddenly thought this system was quite cute. Lilia thought some factor must have been fulfilled. The pocket watch didn't seem to have broken the silencing magic. The female protagonist opened the quest log and found that all the alchemy materials she had collected to the limit in her past life were all there. The recipes she had saved were also there. But it showed that the conditions for the Philosopher's Stone were not met. Master does not have the required title for alchemy. To reobtain the title of Legendary Alchemist, please complete the newly added recipes. The system provided many materials, but some were materials even Lilia had never seen. The system indicated that materials had to be obtained according to the environment. Lilia wondered if the equipment from the shop could be used here. A stamina recovery potion appeared in front of Lilia. She chugged it down in one go and found her body was truly filled with vitality. The female protagonist saw many items. With these, she could escape the imperial city. Suddenly, Lilia froze. The female protagonist remembered this body's original owner, Lilia. The female protagonist thought that since they weren't welcome here, she would just find another place to live. The female protagonist would carry on Lilia's will and live on. From now on, the female protagonist is Lilia. The female protagonist was like a completely different person. It was finally her turn to be the overpowered protagonist. But there's a drawback. In this world, alchemists are considered heretics. If the temple finds out, it's an immediate death sentence. Lilia thinks that if she secretly sells to nobles, her life would take off in no time. The system prompts the master. The dragon sent out on auto search is returned. Proceed with the next exploration. The heroine chooses to continue the auto search. The heroine opens the equipment catalog and finds that she can use the items inside freely. Today is Juliana's birthday banquet. Merchants frequently enter and exit the imperial city. Lilia plans to hide in a luggage carriage to escape the imperial city. Lilia successfully escapes the imperial city. Her rabbit doll, pen, and letters, pocket watch, and necklace are all she has. Lilia thinks that if she looks like her mother, perhaps she won't be lonely anymore. Lilia remembers the wet nurse, the only one who was good to her. Although she gave birth to Lilia in order to save her parents, who were deemed heretics, Lilia can understand. At that time, the wet nurse was truly in no position to take her away. Later, the wet nurse will return to the Empire for my sake, braving the danger, and then tell Lilia's true identity to the one who drove Lilia to her death. Emperor Perseus. Lilia thinks, what's the use of regretting it then, after driving his own daughter to her death? Suddenly, Lilia spots the knights who are about to leave the city. From their conversation, they're going to Londinium. Romeo once said he wanted to go to Londinium in the future, the Holy Land of Knights. Londinium is also Lilia's mother's hometown. She decides to head there. Afterward, she hides in the knight's carriage. But because Lilia hadn't eaten, she became weak and fainted. When she wakes up again, she has been discovered by the knights. Lilia thinks she's done for this time. At this moment, a fierce-looking old man gets down from the carriage. Seeing him, Lilia is so scared she trembles. His subordinate tells him off. How can you look at her with such a terrifying gaze? The old man tells him to call a doctor. This child seems to be sick. The old man suddenly asks in a gentle voice, "Did you come here all by yourself?" That's amazing. It's the first time Lilia has heard such a gentle tone from an elder. The very first time since returning from the temple. The old man holds out his hands and tells her he has prepared some hot food for her. Lilia doesn't care anymore. Seeing such a sumptuous meal, she can't move another step. Lilia notices the man's aura. He must be a noble. The old man asks her why she was hiding in the carriage. Lilia feels he isn't a bad person, so she tells him her family dislikes her, which is why she ran away. She just wants to live. Anywhere is fine. The old man tells her that the world is a dangerous place for a small child and intends to send her back. Hearing she'll be sent back, Lilia reacts strongly, which startles him. Lilia kneels and begs the old man to help her, saying she doesn't want to go back. The old man asks if she can read. The Night Order happens to need a servant who can work and is literate. Lilia agrees without a second thought. The old man signals for her to go with them to the Holy Land of Knights, Londinium. The female knight takes Lilia to see their squadron's captain, stating that during this journey, the child will serve as the captain's servant. In the captain's eyes, she has snow-white skin and eyes like a spirit dancing on a lake. Though a bit messy, her silver hair is soft. She looks small due to malnutrition, but she has a beautiful face. The captain seems to like this child and asks for her age and name. Lilia tells him her age. As for her name, the female knight tells him it's a secret, and that his grace also said not to press the matter. The woman's name is Tezsis. Lilia is also happy to meet her. The woman wants to take her to get a change of clothes, as they are too dirty. Lilia can't help it. These were the clothes she took from the temple. At this time, the imperial city is searching for someone, and this is an order from the emperor himself. The man is shocked. Who are they looking for to cause such a commotion? It turns out the person the emperor is looking for is Lilia. At this moment, Lilia has been dressed up to look especially cute by Tezsis and the others. Both of them are completely charmed by Lilia's adorable appearance. Lilia has been traveling with them for 2 days. These 2 days have also been quite helpless for Lilia, but they didn't treat Lilia like a stray child at all. Instead, it was more like they were treating her as a noble lady. Lilia sees the sea again and is captivated by the beauty of this world sea. Tezsis tells Lilia that a knight was poisoned before. That fellow was unwilling to receive treatment at the capital's temple, so he had no choice but to come to Londinium. He should be cured by now. After staying here for a few more days to rest and resupply, Tezsis and the others will be leaving this place soon to return to their territory, which is very far from here. Lilia wanted to come to Londinium because she thought she might be able to escape to a foreign country from here, but then she would be all alone again. Tezsis asks her to come back with them if she's willing. She also tells her that their lord is a very good person. As a noble who protects his territory, he is someone trustworthy and dependable, but his grace has experienced some sad events. Tezsis tells Lilia that it's been a long time since she's seen his grace so happy. Tezsis won't force her and lets her choose for herself. In the morning, Lilia makes her choice. The old man specially comes to greet Lilia in the morning. In a carriage, the old man asks her if she has ever seen a map of Valeria. Lilia says she has only seen a map of Dracania, but has never looked closely at a map of Valeria. The old man strokes his chin, just about to name his territory, when suddenly the carriage is ordered to stop. It turns out someone is conducting an inspection, and by order of His Majesty the Emperor, they are to search this carriage. They state that they are looking for a 10-year-old girl with silver hair and blue eyes. Lilia is scared to death, afraid they will give her up. The noble old man notices Lilia's expression and realizes at that moment that the person the emperor is looking for is the little girl right in front of him. He kicks the carriage door open and angrily warns the man, "How dare you search my carriage?" But the man insists it's the emperor's order. The noble old man says if he wants to see inside the carriage, he should come and look himself out of course. If the emperor still has any shame, he definitely wouldn't dare to appear before me. The noble old man tells her to sit tight, that everything is fine. Lilia didn't expect that he really wouldn't hand her over to the soldiers. But how can Lilia explain that she is the 10-year-old silver-haired girl the emperor is going to such lengths to find, even setting up checkpoints? If she tells the truth, Lilia wonders if they would help her and hide her. But Lilia feels she can't do that. She can't involve them in something dangerous. So she decides to get out of the carriage now. The noble old man interrupts Lilia and continues their previous conversation. The noble old man knows Lilia hasn't seen a map of Valeria. The place the noble old man is taking her to is the northwestern border region of Olaria, the area farthest from the capital. That is the territory of the ducal house of Hyperion. When Duke Hyperion first saw her frightened eyes, he was reminded of his daughter. He believes he was a strict father, so that child was always afraid of him. But in the end, he lost that child forever. He feels he was a foolish father. Duke Hyperion deeply regrets it. If he had been a gentler father, he could have seen that child smile a few more times. So Duke Hyperion can't just leave her. He saw that Lelia's eyes were very much like his daughter's. It turns out his daughter was Elizabeth Lelia. The old man before her is her grandfather, her only family. Duke Hyperion wants to hear Lelia's story. Inside the carriage, Lelia tells Duke Hyperion everything. Duke Hyperion can't believe the little girl before him is actually his granddaughter. Lelia talks about the many good friends she met outside the imperial palace. But Lelia doesn't mention the silent spell, her life in the tower, or the temple. She doesn't want to worry her grandfather. Her grandfather takes her hand and calls her granddaughter. Grandfather brings Lelia to the territory. The woman is named Arshas, and she is Lelia's aunt. But she doesn't yet know who this little girl her father brought back is. Arshas assumes her father has an illegitimate child. How filthy. Grandfather tells her not to talk nonsense, and to call her mother and older brother. Arshas tells her father that Carius, her older brother, returned a few days ago and is still resting. Grandfather tells him to come over, as he has something to say to him. First, go see your mother. Grandfather tells Lelia not to worry, and no matter what happens, I will protect you. If she were still here, she would surely do the same. Now let's go, Lelia. Lelia worries that the Hyperion family will never acknowledge her. Arshas brings her mother over. However, the woman before her will shatter Lelia's worries. This woman is Elizabeth's mother, and also Lelia's grandmother, Duchess Lysandra. The first moment grandmother sees Lelia, she is stunned. She immediately grabs Lelia's hand, murmuring, "You're finally back, Elizabeth. I've been looking for you, my daughter. Why have you gotten so thin? It's all right now. Mother will be by your side. You don't have to worry about anything anymore." Lelia truly doesn't have to worry about anything anymore, because she has finally found her family. Lelia cries out, "Mother," just as Arshas is about to ask her father what is going on. She notices that her usually strong father is actually crying. Arshas recalls seeing her older sister Elizabeth as a child. Her impression of her sister isn't strong. She wonders if the child before her really looks like her sister. Lelia's grandfather arranges for her to stay in her mother's room. He also tells her that her grandmother now has an illness, which seems to be a mental problem. Lelia knows this kind of illness cannot be cured with holy power. It's a type of brain nerve damage. Dementia is one kind. Grandfather says that his wife started getting sick after Elizabeth died. They've seen many alchemists, but none could help. But he always believed that his wife, upon seeing Lelia, would recognize at first glance that you look like your mother. Grandfather gives the gift in his hand to Lelia, telling her it was a gift he previously gave to Elizabeth. He also tells Lelia that she is not a replacement for Elizabeth, but as your grandfather. Carius finds his father and asks him what is going on. Grandfather retorts, "Is there a problem?" Carius asks him why he brought Iris's child into his sister's room. Grandfather tells him, "Can't you even recognize your own niece?" And then he punches Carius. Carius complains aggrievedly that it's better for his father to use his words. Just then, Geron arrives. The man is Carius's older brother. Geron sees Lelia in the room and understands the situation instantly. Father says, "I called you over precisely to discuss this matter." Then they leave. As he leaves, Grandfather instructs a maid that Lelia can give her any order she has. Uncle Carius turns and leaves. Lelia feels like she might have made things a bigger deal than they are. Lelia looks at the gift from her grandfather and opens it. She finds that it's a music box. Lelia listens to the music from the music box. It sounds crisp and beautiful. But in the novel, the Hyperion family ends up shattered. A great noble family that rose with the founding of the empire. But after Juliana comes of age, the Hyperion family begins to be plagued by misfortune. The Duke dies suddenly for unknown reasons. The eldest son, Geron, dies in battle. The second son, Carius, goes missing. The third child, Arshas, is discovered to have issued a huge amount of promissory notes for gambling. Although Geron's eldest son inherits the position of the next head of the family, the young head becomes a puppet of the elders. Lilia will not allow such a future to happen. Lilia calls the alchemy system. Lilia begins to plan recipes that can change the family's future. Later, their family holds a meeting to discuss Lilia. Lilia's father declares in front of them that he will not send Lilia to the capital. Arshas thinks it's fortunate that they are far from the capital. No one should think that they are protecting Iris's daughter. The eldest son suggests that their father should probably explain the situation to the vassals. Father says he will tell them he found a child who looks like Elizabeth for the sake of the duchess's illness. Father tells them they must keep it a secret. Arshas says she trusts her mother's choice. Carius, however, finds it hard to decide if she really is his sister's child and can bring comfort to their mother. But if she really is Princess Iris's daughter, he knows that Iris bullied and insulted his sister. His older brother comforts him. If you don't believe it, you can observe her actions while she's here. Later, Carius comes to Lilia's room and finds her actually making potions with alchemy. Carius asks her if she can make potions. Carius thinks she probably won't admit it. After all, admitting to being an alchemist would get her burned at the stake. Lilia admits it readily. This catches Carius off guard. Lilia tells him to go ahead and report her if he wants to. He won't be the only one in trouble. Carius can't do that either, because he knows his mother's illness also requires an alchemist. Lilia isn't afraid of him disliking her. It doesn't matter if he doesn't believe her. So what if she knows alchemy? Carius is left speechless by her retorts. He apologizes to Lilia and leaves. Carius remembers that time when he also tried to stop his sister from practicing alchemy. At that time, Elizabeth had hoped he would keep his secret. After her uncle leaves, Lilia regrets having put on such an act. As a result, she revealed everything. Lilia thinks it should be fine. With the signs of the Mad Dragon appearing in a few years, and it getting stronger every year, the temple will be busier than ever. They won't have the leisure to grab a child and question if she's an alchemist. To avoid causing trouble for Duke Hyperion, Lilia decides to be more cautious in her future actions. But before that, Lilia gets to eat cookies arranged by the maid. Lilia is thrilled by this. One enjoys the delicious food, the other enjoys the process. Lilia has never enjoyed this kind of treatment before. Before anything else, Lilia's primary goal is to survive. As long as Lilia reaches the age of 19, she can escape the fate of death from the original story. Before then, Lilia plans to solve as many alchemy lotteries as possible to steer her grandfather and grandmother away from their fate of death. As long as she protects them, the fate of the ducal house should also change. When Lilia comes of age, she will return to the capital of Valeria to break the silent spell. The male lead of the original story, Lute, holds the clue to the solution. On the day Lilia knelt to apologize in the tower at the birthday party held in the imperial city, Juliana and Lute met. Lute was originally the son of a commoner, but he met a girl in a small alley. At that time, the girl was in danger of being kidnapped by villains and sold into slavery. The girl Lute bravely saved was Juliana before she became a princess. For Juliana, who was being abused by her own father at the time, the boy who saved her from the hands of adults held a special meaning for her. Then Lute was adopted by a noble, and Juliana became a princess. Then they finally reunited in the imperial city. It was truly a fateful reunion. They are the protagonists of a romance novel. Naturally, Lute later obtains half of a pocket watch. Through a wish granted by the Holy Relic, he gains immense power, becomes a swordsman, defeats the Mad Dragon, and becomes one of the warriors who achieved great military merit. Lilia realizes that to break the silent spell, she needs the complete Holy Relic. Lilia is troubled. It's impossible to snatch it by brute force. Lilia thinks of an opportunity. After the Mad Dragon is killed and peace is restored, Lute and Juliana consider what to do with the Holy Relic. In the end, the two decide to return the Holy Relic to the temple. Lilia thinks this is the best chance. As long as the silent spell is broken, Lilia can see her friends again. She hopes everyone knows how to take care of themselves. She hopes they can be happy. Since coming to the Hyperion Duchy, Lilia has been living a comfortable life. The servants, including Becky, take care of Lilia with all their heart. Her grandmother, Duchess Lysandra, has mentally recovered to normal. She can recognize Lilia as her granddaughter. Aunt Arshas keeps staring at Lilia from a distance, but it doesn't seem like she dislikes her. Now Lilia plans to gather materials. But the material gathering is not going smoothly. The system tells Lilia that if there are undiscovered materials, she can use crystals to unlock them. Crystals are one of the currencies obtained in the game when the alchemy lottery's resident favorability increases or when achievements are met. Besides that, there's another way to get crystals. That is to top up. The system tells her she can use this world's currency to top up crystals. Seeing this, Lilia thinks it's trying to get her to top up the game. Lilia somehow feels that the alchemy system seems to have gained self-awareness. Lilia realizes that even if she wanted to top up, she has no money, but she needs 9,999 spark dust to unlock it as quickly as possible with auto mode. Lilia thinks searching is still better, but Lilia is facing a problem now. She can only sell alchemy potions, but she has no sales route. If Lilia wants to sell alchemy potions without being discovered by the temple, she can only ask her grandfather about it later. But Lilia's relationship with her uncle, Carius, far from improving, has worsened. Lilia knows that in the original novel, Carius was severely traumatized and even suffered from aphasia for a time. Although Lilia sympathizes with him, she doesn't want to live her whole life as an invisible person, catering to his moods. So she can only maintain a certain distance from Carius. But Carius takes the initiative to approach Lilia. This time, he invites Lilia to have dessert. Becky's expression seemed troubled. Lilia looked at his expression. She thought Caglius had poisoned her dessert. Lilia thought that was impossible. It turned out Becky was afraid Lilia wouldn't like this dessert, so she told him he didn't have to force himself and could spit it out. But Lilia found the dessert to be truly delicious. She asked Becky what this dessert was. She wanted to eat it every day. Caglius was stunned. He recalled his childhood when his mother prepared maclia for them. The siblings loved this dessert very much. Caglius was filled with regret. Not only had he been immersed in his own feelings, but he had also used the cowardice of hatred as an excuse to leave a 10-year-old girl to die. He had also nearly taken the life of his sister's daughter. Caglius completely lost control of his tears. He knelt on the ground and apologized to Lilia, explaining that on the day he met you, he should have saved you. He should have protected you. I'm so sorry. Grandfather was also a bit at a loss seeing such a scene. Lilia frantically said she wasn't the one who made him cry. Caglius remembered when he cried as a child, his sister would also frantically explain to their father. Thinking of this, Caglius couldn't help but laugh, thinking he was truly a useless younger brother. Caglius and Elizabeth had the deepest bond. Lilia could understand Caglius's actions. Caglius approached Lilia again, wanted to talk with her more. This time, Caglius formally apologized to Lilia, and he told her that he shouldn't have gotten angry at you in the cabin that day. If I had been calmer at the time, perhaps you could have suffered less. What kind of mood were you in, living in the Imperial City? It must not have been easy to make a living there. I should have reached out a hand to you back then. He hoped Lilia could forgive this foolish uncle. Lilia asked him if he believed her now. Caglius now had to admit that the girl before him was his sister's daughter. For this, Caglius knelt and told her that as family, no matter what happened, he would always be on her side. Lilia never thought a day like this would come. In the Imperial Palace, Lilia had no one who needed her. It was as if everything would be perfect if she just disappeared. Caglius comforted her. You are truly strong. You've worked so hard to live until now. If I had lost you too, I might have lived in guilt for the rest of my life. So thank you, Lilia. Thank you for coming back strong. Lilia threw herself into her uncle's arms, crying as she told him about her experiences in the Imperial Palace. After a good cry, Lilia started asking her uncle for some money. Caglius asked Lilia how much she needed and that he would prepare it immediately. Lilia really couldn't bring herself to say, I want to make an in-game purchase. Give me 10 million. Lilia made up a lie, explaining that she wanted to start a big business. Caglius didn't expect Lilia to be thinking about her future so soon. Very well, your uncle will definitely help you with this. He directly gave Lilia all the money he had on him. Caglius told her it wasn't much, only 500,000. Caglius told her that his sister was bold since she was little. You're even more outstanding than your sister. But don't push yourself too hard. A piece of advice from your uncle. Lilia was very grateful for her uncle's help. Just after Caglius said goodbye to Lilia, Caglius hadn't expected what Lilia had gone through. Emperor Ladius had thrown Lilia into an abandoned tower. After Emperor Perseus reclaimed the throne, he treated Lelia as Princess Iris's daughter, hating her. The result of her silently enduring all this was being kicked out of the tower she lived in. And all of this was done by Lelia's own older brothers, who were also Cagliost's nephews, Cedric and Damien. Caglios was still very happy to learn that Cedric and Damien were alive. He swore he would protect his nephews on his sister's behalf as well. His father complained that he was not only slow-witted, but also cried in front of his niece. How unsightly. Caglios retorted that his father had been acting as a kind grandfather in front of Lelia. The sun must have risen from the west recently. This father and son stubbornness was truly identical. Caglios asked his father if he really didn't plan to tell Emperor Perseus that Lelia is his sister's daughter. His father believed the matter was definitely not simple. If Lelia could have revealed her true identity back then, she would have said so long ago. But she risked danger to escape from the imperial city. Doesn't Lelia's choice already explain everything? If Perseus knew the truth, he would definitely find a way to bring her back to the imperial city, even if Lelia was unwilling. The Duke of Super Ion would not allow such a thing to happen. Caglios mentioned that a new empress and princess had appeared in the palace. The emperor is completely smitten with that daughter, Juliana. Cedric and Damien are the same. His father also didn't understand why they were like this. Although they said they would come to the territory to visit after a while, Caglios asked his father to stop them from coming, because they are not yet mature. If they happened to run into Lelia, word would surely get back to the emperor. His father thought they could just have Lelia hide. Caglios stated very seriously that Lelia shouldn't have to hide like a criminal. This is Lelia's home. The status of a princess that should have belonged to that child, the love of her father and brothers, were all taken away. Must she be treated this way, even in her own home? His father was stunned. Caglios had always doted on his nephews. He guessed that Lelia might have said some things he didn't know. His father also agreed with Caglios's words. The family will always stand by Lelia's side, no matter what happens and no matter who the opponent is. Meanwhile, on the other side, the mad dragon Lelia spoke of was already stirring. The time in the Super Ion territory passed in the blink of an eye for several years. Lelia was already 13 years old. Her relationship with Atias had also become very close. Moreover, she taught Lelia some noble etiquette, provided her with items made from alchemy, and gave advice on sales. Lelia discovered that Atias was a very respectable noble, but she was addicted to gambling and squandered the territory's wealth. Atias also had a husband named Almas, a great merchant who ran a merchant group in the Super Ion territory. But the novel said that because he was busy with business, he rarely came home. Lelia speculated that the reason for Atias's debt and gambling was the loneliness caused by her husband's absence and the misfortunes that had befallen her family. Lelia believed she wasn't that kind of person. Meanwhile, on the other side, Caglios was being visited by temple officials, and this scene was witnessed by Lelia. In the novel, Caglios went to fight the Mad Dragon, successfully distinguished himself, and then suddenly disappeared one day after returning. After the Mad Dragon died, cultists who worshipped the Mad Dragon as a god appeared. Lelia guessed that Caglios was murdered by them. Lelia didn't want such a future to happen. Becky hurriedly told Lelia that a letter had arrived from Caglios that day. At this time, Lelia was already 19 years old. Meanwhile, the subjugation team was fighting monsters. Karis told Romeo to get back. Romeo smiled, signaling that he'd better not get involved. With one blow, he heavily wounded the monster. Then Oscar delivered the final blow, completely annihilating the monster. At this time, Griffith was responsible for treating the wounded. The twins, Cedric and Damien, also joined the subjugation team. However, for pairs of eyes were staring at them, believing they had killed Leo's father, Ladius Olaria. Perseus, the son of Olaria, who reclaimed the throne. The one who killed Leo might be one of Emperor Perseus's people. They wanted to avenge Leo. Atias learned from Lelia that her brother Caglios will be back soon. Atias said that Caglios would definitely be shocked to see you. Such an adorable Lelia has turned into such a beautiful lady. Atias thought it was a pity she wasn't holding a coming-of-age banquet. Lelia didn't want to accept marriage proposals from strangers. Atias was worried sick about this for her. Lelia had lived in the territory for 9 years, but there were still many people who opposed her. 6 years ago, the foolish son of the Crick family threw sand at Lelia, calling her a fake. Lelia would remember that for a lifetime, but Lelia didn't want to cause trouble for her grandfather. Besides, the Crick couple were good people, so she eventually forgave them. If a banquet were held, those vassals who looked down on Lilia would surely not accept it. Lilia didn't want to bring unnecessary trouble to her family. Lilia asked Anatias if she could do her a favor. Thanks to Lilia's recovery potions selling like hotcakes through word of mouth, Lilia soon collected the 10 million gold needed to view the alchemy recipes. Most of the money was taken by the merchants who sold the potions for her, avoiding the eyes of the temple. The potions sold very well. The temple was busy dealing with a mad dragon and had no time to pay attention to Lilia's movements. Just like that, Lilia saved up a lot of money, unlocked all the recipes, and instantly collected most of the materials. Moreover, Lilia had never left the Super Ion territory. The speed at which she collected materials surprised her. The only material left was the Crystal of Memory. Lilia speculated that her grandmother might be the key to finding this material. In her grandmother's memories, in a place related to Elizabeth. Perhaps the menu in the cabin hadn't been fully unlocked, which was why she hadn't collected the special material. Although there was no basis for the Crystal of Memory being there. As long as there was a slight possibility, Lilia was willing to investigate, because it concerned her grandmother's life. But she still had to get the other half of the holy relic from the novel's male lead, Loot. For this reason, Lilia said goodbye to her family under the pretext of going to the capital to buy materials. The thought of returning to the capital made Lilia a little scared, but it was okay. The heroes who ended the Mad Dragon subjugation would return to the capital, Oleria. Lilia felt she could return with her uncle. If she was lucky, she might even meet those 4 heroes. And so, Lilia would follow Atias's husband's merchant group. They set off for the capital together. Just like that, after 9 years, Lilia once again set foot in a place she was familiar with. Soon, a triumphal ceremony would be held to welcome the heroes of the Mad Dragon subjugation team. There would be celebrations around the imperial city for several days. Inside the imperial city, a grand week-long banquet would be held to entertain the heroes. At that time, Lilia planned to sneak into the Oleria imperial city. For this, Lilia planned to inquire about Loot's whereabouts. Suddenly, a merchant was selling portraits of the heroes from the Mad Dragon subjugation team. This gave Lilia a lead. Perhaps she could find information about Loot. Romeo and the others were heading to the Oleria Empire alone, and they didn't plan to attend their own triumphal ceremony. What they had to do was find the person who killed their captain, Leo, that woman named Lilia Oleria. On the day of the triumphal ceremony in the capital of the Oleria Empire, Lilia saw her uncle. She marveled that her uncle hadn't changed a bit after 6 years. Suddenly, Lilia saw people she hated. It was the twin princes. Lilia saw a person whose aura was completely different from ordinary people. Lilia knew he was Loot. She planned to find a chance to get close to him, but the 4 people Lilia was waiting for didn't appear. Lilia was a little disappointed, but she still looked forward to reuniting with them. On the first day of the banquet celebrating the Mad Dragon subjugation, Romeo used his good looks to attract some young noble ladies. In terms of status, wealth, and looks, he was a standout among the younger generation. Many nobles were willing to marry their daughters to Romeo. Griffith Nigia was from the temple. Karis Aska was of royal descent, very famous in the mercenary world, but he was blind. Oscar Hellsberg, although a handsome man straight out of a painting, had an icy temperament, making one even suspect if he was a demon. Romeo found a man and asked him if he knew Lilia. The man told him she was the daughter of Princess Iris, who left the imperial city 9 years ago and had passed away. Lilia Oleria. Griffith asked, "Is this the place where that Princess Lilia lived?" Romeo explained that they said she ran away from the imperial city because she was unwilling to enter a political marriage. Karis looked at the tower and exclaimed that it was too magnificent. Even if she was unwilling to have a political marriage for a 10-year-old girl living a life of luxury here to run away from the imperial city. Does that make sense? Romeo thought there might be other circumstances, like having a lover. Griffith, if that were the case, such sensational news would have spread long ago. To sum it up, Lilia Oleria ran away from the imperial city alone. In Griffith's view, most of what they heard were rumors. The only thing that could be confirmed was that Princess Lilia was missing. Oscar guessed, could it be that the emperor hid her? After Leo's death, the one who benefited the most was the current emperor. If Lilia was also one of the emperor's pawns, Romeo felt that speculating like this was not a solution. There were still 6 days left of the banquet. They would continue to investigate in the remaining time. Romeo informed them that he would continue to do mana tracking during this period. All they had to do was track that pen. Oscar told him, "Isn't it impossible to track after the magic stone is removed?" Romeo told him not to worry. It turned out he had absorbed the Mad Dragon's mana. Even if the magic stone was removed from the pen, he could still track it. On the second day of the banquet, Princess Juliana made a grand entrance. Seeing this, Lute didn't dare to approach Juliana to talk, but Juliana took the initiative to approach Lute. Lute shyly praised Juliana for being beautiful today. The emperor appeared and asked what they were talking about. Juliana said she was just catching up with Lute. The twins popped up and asked Juliana, "If those four heroes proposed to you, who would you marry?" Juliana's eyes couldn't help but look at Lute. The emperor father said it seemed he would have to issue a marriage ban. At this time, the four were not at the banquet, because Romeo had informed them that the pen had appeared in the capital. At this moment, Lilia was raising the affinity of all the residents in the system. The system praised her for raising the affinity of all residents to the maximum level. As a reward, the system offered a 20% discount on 100,000 crystals. Lured by the system, Lilia started making in-game purchases. The system popped up, unlocking the special affinity system and a hidden quest. Lilia was stunned. All this time, what she had been raising was not the special affinity. The system explained they were completely different. The relationship affinity was a prerequisite quest. Lilia was too tired to complain. At this time, the four, following Romeo's senses, arrived at an inn. Karis told them, "Do you remember what Leo said at the temple?" Back then, he was asked how he knew the wolves would appear. In the end, he said he had a prophetic dream. Karis deduced that guy seemed to know the future, saying strange things. So he might have predicted that something would happen to him and deliberately wrote down the killer's name. Lilia Olaria. They must find this woman. Lilia woke up from her bed. Today was the fourth day of the banquet for the heroes. There were 3 days left before her infiltration mission. So Lilia was very lucky because she got a dragon from the system. And it was a shadow dragon, the most efficient for gathering. This would make Lilia's material collection very efficient. Just as Lilia walked out of the inn, the system suddenly prompted that a special affinity target was approaching. Suddenly, a man's voice came from behind Lilia, calling her name. Lilia finally saw the 4 people she had been longing to see. But when she turned around, they were holding weapons, closing in on her. Oscar saw that Lilia had green eyes and concluded that she was from the Olaria royal family. They didn't expect to actually find this woman. But what made them angry was that she looked a lot like Leo. Karis told her to answer honestly. "Why did you kill Leo?" Oscar was furious. He knocked Lilia unconscious. When Lilia opened her eyes, she found herself surrounded by system windows. The system prompted her to complete the special affinity system within the time limit, or she would be punished. Lilia saw Romeo standing alive in front of her. She choked up and was about to cry. Griffith told her, "Are you crying because you're scared? All you can do now is answer properly." Lilia also saw Griffith and Karis, but she noticed his eyes seemed to be in pain. Oscar told her, "From now on, if you're even a little slow to answer, I'll cut off your fingers one by one." Lilia knew he was Oscar, but she never thought Oscar would point a sword at her. Lilia really missed them. Romeo asked her if she killed Leo. Lilia was completely bewildered. Lilia was struggling internally. How could I have killed myself? She didn't understand why Romeo and the others didn't recognize her. But Lilia was still under a silent spell, so she couldn't speak even if she wanted to. Griffith told her, "Leo left your name before he died. You have Leo's pen. You should have stayed in the dorm." Oscar cuts Lilia's neck. He warns Lilia that a wrong answer will cost her her head. Lilia is desperate to tell them, but if she speaks now, she will be killed by cursed magic. Lilia has no choice but to call Leo her brother and tell them the cause of his death is related to Count Het, a confidant of the former Emperor Ladius. Griffith wants to know how she can prove it. Lilia explains that the Count was executed by Ladius, and then the current Emperor Perseus seized the throne. All of Ladius's people who knew the details at the time have been killed. Oscar tells her that means there are no witnesses. Actually, Lilia had intentionally left her name for them to discover this matter, not expecting she would be digging her own grave. Suddenly, Lilia thinks of something. She tells them her birthday is the 27th of the month of Ceres. Griffith remembers something. On his birthday, he had asked Leo about the birthday of his important person. Leo had said that it was his most important person's birthday. Oscar's anger instantly vanishes, and he lowers his weapon. Romeo wants to know how that pen ended up in her hands. Lilia explains that her brother Leo gave it to her before he passed away. The letters he exchanged with them and the rabbit doll are also in the dorm. Callus asks why Leo wrote her name in the letter. Lilia explains, could have meant that he was asking you to take care of his cousin. Lilia is troubled. Having finally reunited, she has to lie to them again. Lilia tells them, when brother Leo was living at the temple, you all celebrated my birthday with him. I can't tell you how happy I was when I heard about it. At this moment, Lilia wasn't lying. Lilia thanked them from the bottom of her heart. At that time, she felt acknowledged. Even though she was cold, hungry, and lonely, it was a memory she shared with them. It's how she survived until now. Lilia likes them. Being able to survive and meet them makes her really happy. And she tells them that brother Leo told her many stories, like the time he was almost killed by a wolf on a mountain. Receiving a doll as a gift when they went to play outside the temple. Everyone called brother Leo Captain. The story of holding the same dolls and talking all night. He said, I have 4 of the most important childhood friends. Callus apologizes to Lilia. He didn't expect it to be a misunderstanding. Lilia thinks to herself that if she hadn't been a bit smarter, she would have died. As an apology, Griffith heals Lilia's injuries. He tells Oscar to hurry up and apologize too. Lilia says she's fine now. Callus had planned to come back to avenge Leo, but didn't expect the culprit to be already dead. So he plans to return to his life in the mercenary group. Romeo looks at Callus with concern for his eyes. Callus says he's fine. Lilia knows his eyes are like that because of the Mad Dragon. She didn't expect that he'd act the same as always just to keep his friend from worrying. Griffith also plans to return to his country. In the original story, Griffith had cut ties with his family during the period when he became the master of the Holy Sword in the sacred neutral territory. Oscar also says he's going back. Lilia is shocked. She doesn't understand what happened to Oscar during this time to make him so murderous. The Oscar in Lilia's mind is like a winter spirit. Lilia knows that if he goes back, it's to kill his father. Romeo, however, says he has nothing to do. At this, the 4 of them look at Lilia, wanting to know what she plans to do next. Lilia can only say in a fluster that she wants to go to the imperial palace to find something. Callus tells her, what if the emperor finds you? You're too bold. Griffith wants to know what she's looking for that's worth such a risk. Lilia doesn't explain the reason, only telling them not to worry and that she has a way. Suddenly, Callus tells Oscar and Griffith to return to their countries first. As for the rest, he and Romeo will stay. They will stay behind to help Leo's sister. The 4 of them agree to gather here in a month. Oscar says that in 1 month, it will be Leo's birthday. Griffith says he will definitely be back before then. Romeo says that will be the last time everyone gathers together. Callus says that after that, they will all go their separate ways. Lilia sees numbers appearing on them. These are the numbers Lilia saw when she was unconscious, but their affection levels are all negative. This means Lilia has to win them over next. But the others are negative, while Callus's is a question mark. The system tells her that special affection levels will display as a question mark after becoming positive. To know the specific number, she must use a crystal or complete a hidden mission. Lilia doesn't understand how the system can interfere with these things. At this moment, Callus swears to Leo, I will protect your sister. Your sister is our sister. And he asks Lilia to call him brother. Lilia can only awkwardly call out brother. Lilia complains internally that she's the real captain. Afterwards, the 3 of them begin to discuss their next battle plan. Callus and Lilia plan to sneak in through the main gate. For this day, the sleeping potion Lilia, made with alchemy, finally comes in handy. In the end, all the soldiers fall fast asleep. Suddenly, Callus notices a soldier move and thinks he's woken up. Lilia says he just twitched, but Callus's fist, the size of a sandbag, has already flown out. Callus tries to explain, but Lilia decides to leave him here to watch the soldier and plans to go in alone. Meanwhile, Romeo is keeping the nobles occupied. Lilia is very grateful to them. Even if her father and brothers don't love her, she doesn't need their affection. She has people who love her more now. So this time, Lilia must complete the alchemy and cure her grandmother. But what Lilia didn't expect was that her father wasn't at the banquet. Instead, he had come to the small cabin left by Elizabeth. Missing Elizabeth too much, he was drinking alone in sorrow. Suddenly, Perseus seems to see something. It's Lilia, but she has discovered that Perseus, the emperor, is actually here. Lilia prepares to run. Perseus shouts, begging her not to go. Please stay by my side. Elizabeth, to quiet him down, Lelia uses a sleeping spray on him. But Lelia doesn't intend to give up. Lelia hopes to successfully find the memory crystal. Even as he falls into a deep sleep, Perseus keeps muttering, Elizabeth. Lelia doesn't understand. With Juliana's birth mother, current Empress Mariana of the Olaria Empire, the birth of a new prince, his beloved daughter Juliana by his side, and both princes having returned safely from the Mad Dragon subjugation. But why is he still in this dark room? Suddenly, a soldier notices a commotion inside and asks if something has happened to the emperor. Seeing no response, the soldier prepares to enter and check, but is knocked to the ground by Lelia. But more and more soldiers hear the commotion and are rushing over. Left with no choice, Lelia can only escape. But because she left the exploration area, the mission failed. However, if she hadn't escaped and was discovered, they would have surely locked the main gate, and she wouldn't have been able to get out. Lelia tells Callus to run, that the mission has failed. Callus sees her panting, so he carries her and escapes safely from the imperial palace. Lelia sighs, what a pity, she was so close to succeeding. Callus tells her that if she had let him follow, they might have succeeded. Lelia thinks that he, on the other hand, might have knocked out the emperor, which would have turned into an international incident. Since it has come to this, Lelia decides to check Callus's affection level. She finds that Callus's affection level is still a question mark. So Lelia tries to see if there's a shortcut to check it, but finds that to confirm the affection level, she must use a premium crystal. Lelia thinks this is too expensive. At this moment, the system pops up a hidden mission. The mission objective is to solve Callus's problem. She will receive a reward upon completion. Lelia notices an affection level confirmation ticket among the rewards, which should be able to confirm the affection level. Lelia accepts the mission. Callus feels that since this mission failed, they can only use Romeo's plan. Have Lelia pretend to be a cousin from a relative's family to infiltrate the imperial city. Lelia says that's the only way. She doesn't know what problem Callus has and doesn't know how to ask. Lelia can only ask for his opinion. Callus suddenly starts complaining, feeling that it's not quite right without a sword in his hand. He's not worried about the sword being stolen, because no one but Callus can lift it. Callus explains that the sword is too big to carry to various banquets. It's too conspicuous, so he left the sword at home. But if left alone for too long, the sword will get angry. Lelia then realizes this is what he's worried about. The system tells Lelia to solve Callus's problem. At this moment, Lelia has an alchemy recipe that can freely control size. Lelia takes out the potion she made and tells him it can change the size of objects at will. Callus is very excited. He had been so envious when Romeo and Griffith used magic to pull out their weapons. After getting the potion, Callus is as happy as a child. Lelia makes a resolution. One day, she will restore the light to Callus's eyes. Callus's cheerful personality makes Lelia feel like she has returned to her childhood. Because of this mission, Lelia obtained an affection ticket that can raise affection levels, but she doesn't plan to use it now. There was also a random gift box, which only contained a few useless materials. And finally, an alchemy lottery ticket. But the system tells her she must complete a side quest to unlock the premium shop. At this moment, Romeo sighs, saying he's about to die from exhaustion. Romeo tells Lelia that the Emperor is looking for a woman with green eyes. This means they can't proceed with the previous plan. If he brings her, a silver-haired, green-eyed woman, to the palace, she will definitely be targeted by the Emperor. Romeo says there's another way. They just need to turn Lelia of Olaria into a man. Meanwhile, Juliana learns that 2 of the 4 heroes of the Mad Dragon subjugation team, Mr. Romeo and Mr. Callus, have decided to stay in the Olaria Imperial City for a few more days. Her maid tells her it must be because they want to get closer to her. She also says that the banquet held today is to find a fiancé for her. But Juliana can't even remember their faces clearly. Still, she hopes that the 2 of them genuinely like her. She is frustrated by Lute's hesitation and lack of initiative in pursuing her, because her brother looks disgusted by women who throw themselves at him. She's also afraid Lute will dislike her for being too forward. So she plans to stare at other men at the banquet to make Lute jealous. At the banquet, Perseus asks Romeo why he didn't bring his guest. Romeo says he might be too tired and plans to rest a bit before coming out. The Empress asks him if he has a sweetheart. Romeo lies and tells her he has a fiancé in his home country. The Empress can't press the matter further. At this time, Lute and other nobles are staring daggers at Callus. Callus notices they are staring at him. Romeo laughs at him. "You're amazing," attracting the gazes of all the men at the banquet. Romeo tells him it can't be helped because Juliana is staring at him. Callus thinks she's just interested in the color of his cursed eyes. How disgusting. Romeo tells him to bear with it a little longer. Lilia should be about done with her exploration. Found special material, Crystal of Memories. As a reward, a 20% discount on 100,000 crystals is given. Lilia wasn't wrong. The memory crystal was here.